friends, we are in the final stretch of our Right on Time series, and I'm so glad you joined us here today. What a great series this has been, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. So I have a challenge for you guys today. Anyone else like being challenged? Yes, I have a challenge for you today during today's Bible story, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So you gotta hang tight. And I want everyone to get caught up before we go into our Bible story today on what we've been learning about the life of Joseph. So last week we left off when Joseph saw his brothers for the first time in a very long time, and I am dying to know what happens next. Is anyone else dying to know? Let me give you a little recap. Joseph had a pretty rough past with his brothers. Do you guys remember what they did to him? They threw him in a pit, they sold him into slavery to traders from very far away, and then they told their dad Joseph was dead, when in fact he was not. Joseph's brothers were jealous of Joseph because he was the favorite, and that's one of the reasons they sold him to traders far away. So many years later, when his brothers came to Egypt, where Joseph was, to get grain, Joseph knew exactly who they were. But his brothers didn't recognize him, and they didn't know they were standing in front of their very own brother. Joseph could have been very mean to his brothers, but instead he obeyed God by showing them kindness. He gave them grain and even returned their money. So before we continue, let's make this Bible story into a challenge, as I said a minute ago. As I tell you the story today, I challenge you to try to count all the times Joseph obeys, or in other words, does what God asked him to do. I will ask you at the end of the story, so be sure to listen very closely. So the story continues with Joseph's brothers going back home and eating all of the grain that Joseph had given them. Then their father Jacob wanted his sons to travel all the way back to Egypt to get more grain for their family. This time, Jacob sent 2 times as many gifts and money with his sons. A quick question for you guys. Are you guys still listening? If you were Joseph, what gift would you hope the brothers would bring with them? Shout it out or type it in the feed. I bet you guys have some really good gift ideas. In the Bible, it says the gifts that Jacob sent with them were things like lotion, honey, spices, and almonds. Were these any of the gifts you hoped they would bring? So Joseph's brothers took the journey back to Egypt with these gifts in hands. When his brothers got to Egypt, Joseph told his servant to invite them to his house and make a meal for them. Joseph fed their donkeys and gave them water and washed their feet, which would have been very dirty from walking such a long way. Boys and girls, are you remembering to count how many times Joseph obeyed like I challenged you to do? And real quick, before we continue, I have another question for you guys. How was Joseph obeying God in this situation? If you said being kind to his brothers, you were right on track. Joseph arrived just in time for lunch. When his brothers saw him, they bowed down to him. They still had no idea that it was their brother, though. Joseph asked his brothers about their father. They told him that Jacob was alive and he was doing well. Then Joseph saw Benjamin. This was the brother that he loved so much. And Joseph got even a little teary-eyed when he saw him. So he had to run out of the room and find a place to cry. Then Joseph washed his face and went back to eat with his brothers. They still didn't know who he was. And after eating lunch with his brothers, he sent them back home with plenty of food. Joseph had planned a way to test his brothers on their journey home, but he knew this was wrong and sent one of his servants after them to stop his plan and bring them back. Do you all think Joseph obeyed God by deciding not to go through with his plan? Yes, that's right. Friends, have you ever thought about doing the wrong thing and then changed your mind like Joseph did? I know I have. Sometimes we may think about or want to do things that are wrong, but we can obey God by not actually doing the things that we think up that are wrong. When Joseph's brothers came back, Joseph finally told them that he was their brother. At first, his brothers were really scared because they knew and remember what they had done to Joseph a long time ago. However, Joseph told them not to be angry at themselves. You see, Joseph had obeyed God and forgiven them. When we forgive others, we're obeying God too. So after that, Joseph told his brothers to go home, get their father, and come back with their families to live in Egypt. Joseph wanted to take care of them and give them plenty of food. When Joseph told his family to come back and live in Egypt, he was obeying God by being kind and generous and not taking revenge on his brothers who had done wrong things to him. As soon as they got home, Joseph's brothers told their father that Joseph was alive. Jacob was so happy and planned to go see Joseph. Okay, friends, so here is your quiz. How many times did Joseph obey God in this story? Hold up your fingers. 4 times. Way to go, Joseph. Does anyone remember some specific ways that Joseph obeyed God in this story? Let's recap them together. Joseph obeyed God by 1, showing kindness, 2, not following through with the wrong things he wanted to do, 3, forgiving his brothers, and 4, by being generous. Friends, we can learn from Joseph's example to always obey God, even when it's not easy to do. When we choose to obey God, it not only affects us, it affects others around us too, just like it helped Joseph's family when Joseph obeyed. Obeying doesn't just happen by accident. We have to choose to obey, and I believe each of you, when you have the power of Jesus in your heart, can choose to obey God too. So think about this question, and then let's say our memory verse together. How can you choose to obey God this week? Let me repeat that one more time so you don't miss it. How can you choose to obey God this week? We've been working on memorizing a Bible verse from Micah 6:8. Today we are going to learn the last bit of it. Let's practice what we've learned so far, and then you can repeat each line after me when we add the new line too. The Lord has shown you what is good. He has told you what He requires of you. You must act with justice. The Lord has shown you what is good. He has told you what He requires of you. You must act with justice. Good job. Let's repeat this line. You must love to show mercy. You must love to show mercy. And you must be humble. And you must be humble as you live in the sight of your God. As you live in the sight of your God. Great job, friends. This verse is such a good one. Make sure you learn it and memorize it if you haven't yet. I promise your life will be better if you live by these words of God in this verse. I will see you next week for our final week of Right on Time back here on Kids Spot. And remember this week, you are loved. Love you guys.